Good afternoon and welcome to the 2008 East End Planning Conference held by the APA Long Island section of the American Planning Association. My name is Sean Sally and I am the section director of the Long Island section of the APA. And it's always rewarding and encouraging to see so many colleagues, friends, and just interested practitioners coming out to our events. I think we have an excellent lineup this afternoon, very timely topics to cover that are very important for the East End and really the island as a whole. So I'm very interested in learning from our panelists this afternoon. Before we go forward, I would like to introduce Supervisor of the Town of Riverhead, Laura Jen Smith, who will make some opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, welcome to Riverhead. We're so happy that you could join us here once again. Conferences like these are so important to address the unique problems that we face here on Eastern Long Island. And I'm happy to be here with you today to not only talk about Riverhead, but to join you to also learn more about not only the alternative wastewater treatment systems and also the management of managing our coastal waters here, and also to have some dinner buffet. But I wanted to speak to you about some of the challenges and successes that we have here in Riverhead, which will hopefully help spark some interesting discussions. In the past decade, Riverhead has really transformed itself into a regional destination. We had a master plan that we adopted in 2003, which called for an expansion of our commerce on Route 58. This, in and of itself, has brought major changes and challenges to our community. Roads had to be widened, stores needed to be constructed, and now, as we face consumer habits changing, with more and more people ordering online, and also the rise of boutique shopping, we see that the box store model is being left behind, and it's one of the challenges that we were facing here in Riverhead, as well as all across Long Island as we move forward. But with these changes comes opportunity. Big box stores that have fallen by the wayside can now be repurposed. The time to unleash our creativity in these areas is now. Box stores offer so many characteristics that are desired by new tenants, from abundant parking, good visibility, single floors at grade, large open floor spaces, a lot of ceiling to floor height. And there's so much opportunity for new businesses and projects to expand here. From healthcare organizations, from storage facilities, residential uses, assisted living, grocery stores, shared working space, which is becoming more and more prominent here on Long Island, and as well as last mile distribution centers. It's something that we need to think about as we expand further here. And all of this can serve as economic engines, not only here, but for all of the East End. Repurposing these stores is going to be one of our major challenges as we move forward. But I am happy to report that we are already seeing encouraging signs that make it possible for these changes to happen here. Riverhead also cares very deeply about our environment, our natural beauty, tourism industries, and our farmers rely on it. The town here has a strong commitment to be doing its part to fight climate change and lower our carbon production. Riverhead leads the way in this region in solar energy. We are currently poised to provide almost 50% of all solar power to be produced here on Long Island. In the next coming years, we have another solar power facility coming on that's going to be 20 megawatts, and we have an additional 36 megawatt facility that hopefully will be up and running in the next couple of years. And so we are in a unique position to help provide solar energy here for Long Island. We have an abundance of industrial zone land that is not tree-lined. We have a lot of open space and low-density areas where solar can thrive, especially during the summer months. And while we embrace our solar farms, we also must look how it can benefit our community. We certainly welcome solar in our community, its benefits to the region, though it must be balanced with the benefits that it brings to our town here. This is an issue that many communities on Long Island deal with when they're facing renewable energy in their towns and in their villages. As supervisor, I have worked to make sure that we continue building these projects in Riverhead, but we must again see these clear benefits for our Riverhead town residents. People say yes in my backyard when you can see tangible results and benefits for ourselves and our neighbors. It is in everyone's interest to see more renewable energy because the threat of climate change is only going to get worse. We also need to make sure that people do not feel they are being left behind as these projects move forward, and that this can be done through creative and innovative solutions. Another solution that we are working on for our environment here in Riverhead is our sewer system. And there is nothing more that I like to brag about than our sewer system. We have a state-of-the-art treatment facility here that has been called a model for New York. And as a result of recent upgrades, where we can treat up to 1.5 million gallons of wastewater per day to a limit of under 4 milligrams of nitrogen per liter. Using membrane technology, high-dose ultraviolet disinfectant, the plant treats for a host of pathogens as well, and including viruses. We also are using some of the wastewater that is collected for irrigation, reducing nitrogen loading into the Peconic estuary by almost 1.4 tons per year. While we are proud of our sewer system and our sewer district, we cannot accomplish all that we need to accomplish with our environment without talking about alternative wastewater treatment systems here. To sewer all of Long Island, as many of you know, was cost prohibitive. And to encourage these wastewater treatment systems, we also need to make them affordable. We realize that many towns on the East End are providing grants and subsidies to their residents to be able to provide to upgrade these systems. And here in Riverhead, we need to remember that we really are one of the lowest median incomes on all of Long Island. So in order to encourage our residents to put these systems in as their systems fail or as they continue to bill out, we need to make sure that they are affordable so that we can continue to encourage people to use them. And on the East End, we know how critical, as I said, to protect our environment and groundwater because our unique and rural way of life counts so much on it. We need to work to protect the environment and to make sure that we don't overburden the residents. In Riverhead, we have so much to be proud of here, and we can learn from all of you here today. Our challenges are not so great that they cannot be overcome by listening and learning from each other. There is so much potential here, which is why it can often sometimes be frustrating to some of us when we hear that progress is not happening as quickly as we would like. Riverhead's future, though it will be complemented by our past, our rural charm is our biggest asset, and the steps that we take now will be key to preserving it for generations to come. By protecting our environment and containing major development to Route 58, we are making a promise to Riverhead residents and their way of life that their way of life will continue not only now, but for their children and for their children's children. That the farming, the rural culture that so many of us have come here to experience can exist well beyond our lifetimes. So I want to thank you for all being here in Riverhead this evening to learn, to talk, and to listen. There is so much that can be done, so much that needs to be discussed. So I say it's time that we get started. And thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. It sounds like there are very interesting initiatives that lie ahead in the town. So thank you for sharing some of that information with the audience this afternoon. I'd also like to thank Jeff Murphy from the town of Riverhead and Ryan Galera from S Solar, who took us on a fantastic and fascinating tour of some of their solar utility-scale solar facilities that are in operation in the town of Riverhead. Very exciting stuff, and it's great to see that these alternative forms of energy are really taking hold, and we know how sometimes the public meetings can get contentious, but it's great to see those facilities being implemented. So kudos for sure. I'd like to take a quick minute to thank all of our sponsors this afternoon who really helped make this program possible. BHP, Nelson Pope and Voorhees, Roman Stone System, Cameron Engineering, and our media sponsor, Vision Long Island. I would also like to thank members of the APA Long Island Steering Committee, and particularly Kathy Eisman, our section treasurer, couldn't do it without her. Dan Fangman, our section secretary, and Wes Sternberg, our professional development officer, who gathers all of the information and makes sure that the AIC planners are getting credit for these events. So thank you. Overall, the steering committee of the APA Long Island section is really, we understand it's a volunteer organization, and people dedicate their time, take time out of their busy lives to commit to advancing the programming and opportunities for planners on Long Island, young planners. So it's just, again, it's great to see everybody getting involved, and I'd like to thank the entire steering committee. It's been over 6 years since Superstorm Sandy shined a spotlight on the critical importance of a healthy nearshore ecosystem to, among other things, mitigate the impacts of rising sea levels and more extreme and frequent tidal surges and storms. Water quality improvement policy has been at the forefront of Suffolk County and many of its townships over the past decade and even longer than that. It is imperative that we as planners, engineers, public officials, and all citizens continue to work together to improve groundwater and surface water quality to ensure that the next generation of Long Islanders are able to enjoy this beautiful place. I'm excited to hear from our first panel on the advances in alternative on-site wastewater treatment in Suffolk County, and particularly the feedback from those in the audience from East End towns. Keeping with the theme of resiliency, our second panel will be discussing some innovative and creative solutions for managing coastal communities that are faced with the hard reality of more frequent tidal flooding and reoccurring loss of property. I'm especially interested to hear the regional and local perspectives and thoughts with respect to generating consensus around coastal land use and resiliency issues. All of these challenges require solutions developed and implemented by those of you in this room that are sensitive to local communities and values here on Long Island, and especially here on the East End. With that said, I'd like to call our first panel to please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I'm Kyle Collins, Town Planning Development Administrator for the Town of Southampton. Excited about this panel on innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment systems. We have a very knowledgeable panel on this for this topic. As was addressed, groundwater protection is on the forefront of some of our planning topics that are facing Suffolk County. In fact, Suffolk County's comprehensive wastewater resource management plan had a quote in it which goes as, while all sources of water pollution are concerned, nitrogen pollution from septic system are clearly emerged as the most widespread and least well addressed of the region's growing list of water pollutants. And as a result of that, the county started several years ago with the implementation of and the adoption of Article 19, which actually set in a process for the county to approve innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment systems. Prior to that, we had very passive systems, which were just your septic tank and leaching pools. In addition to that, the Community Preservation Fund was amended at the state level that permitted 20% of the CPF funds to be used for water quality projects. As that relates to IA systems, it allows the towns to create rebate systems to pay for these systems. So with that, I'd like to just introduce my panel. To my right, far right, John Sanjin, who's the chief of the Ecology Division or Office of Ecology at the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. Justin Jobin, who's the director of environmental projects. And to my left, Mary Wilson, who's the community preservation manager for the town of Southampton. And to my far right is Chris Clapp, who is the chairman of the wastewater a water quality technical committee for the town of East Hampton. With that, I'd like to turn it over to John.
Hello, everybody. John Sanjay, I'm with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. Justin and I are just going to give you a brief overview of our Innovative and Alternative On-Site Wastewater Treatment System Program, IA Systems for short. So just a little background, why we're so concerned with nitrogen. Well, Suffolk County has about 1.5 million residents. We sit on top of a sole source aquifer. That's where we get our drinking water from, either via public wells or private on-site wells. We also are surrounded basically by surface waters, and each of these things are impacted by nitrogen, mainly from nitrogen from on-site sewage disposal systems, because Suffolk County has about 74% of the county is unsewered. So whatever you put down the toilet goes right into the ground and eventually down to groundwater. So other impacts of nitrogen from wastewater disposal systems or other sources such as fertilizer, harmful algal blooms. There's also loss of coastal vegetation, which helps with coastal resiliency during storms such as Storm Sandy. That leads to a decline in hard clams and egg scallops. Point it the right way?
You're back up.
All right, this slide didn't show up, but in general, this is from the Great South Play. It was a slide showing the percents of nitrogen from different sources. This was done back in 2011, and basically, Great South Bay, 69% of the nitrogen is from on-site sewage disposal systems. Suffolk County is performing the sub-watersheds plan, which is also going to look at a number of watersheds, almost 190 watersheds, to look at these various sources of nitrogen. So just looking at the Great South Bay, you can see what the impact of nitrogen from on-site wastewater systems is. And in fact, we said 74% of Suffolk County is unsewered. There are about 360,000 residential on-site sewage disposal systems. Of those 360,000 systems, we think there are about 209,000 systems located in what we call priority areas. These are areas that are in the 25-year contributing area to surface waters. They have less than 10 feet to groundwater. They're in the 50-year contributing area to public well fields. So that's what our priority areas are. Oh, sorry. We also assume that there are 252,000 systems that have cesspools only. In 1973, the Suffolk County Department of Health, we changed our standards to require septic tanks at the time of new construction. Prior to 1973, 1950s, 1960s, I believe Suffolk County saw a huge population growth. So a lot of those sanitary systems that were installed during those periods were installed with just cesspools only. So cesspools, basically, it's a pit in the ground, a precast or a block pit that's perforated, that sewage comes right out of the house, drains into this structure, and then directly into the ground with basically no treatment. Then we have the conventional sewage disposal system. It's a little more treatment. It's basically a septic tank that goes out to some sort of leaching structure. In general, Suffolk County, it's mainly leaching pools. Basically, it's similar to a cesspool, but it does receive treated water or partially treated water. It removes a lot of BOD and total suspended solids. And that's the minimum size system required by Suffolk County. Then we go to the next level of on-site treatment, and that's our IA systems. These reduce BOD, they reduce total suspended solids, and they can reduce nitrogen. In fact, they can reduce, if we assume 65%, 65 milligrams per liter of nitrogen coming out of the house, we're almost getting a reduction of 70% down to 19 milligrams per liter. And we've seen a lot of test results that in some cases with low flow fixtures, that nitrogen is even higher than that 65 milligrams per liter. Right now, these are not required by Suffolk County to be installed. The minimum system is a conventional system, but there are certain cases where we do require IAs. So just a little history on the evolution of IAs in Suffolk County. Basically, this started back in 2014. The IBM Smarter City report came out, which basically looked at ways to upgrade all wastewater in Suffolk County and the cost to do that. We also, during that year, we went on our septic tour, where we went to Maryland, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, and we looked at their IA programs. We looked at what types of systems they had installed, what type of funding they provided to individuals to upgrade their system, what type of enforcement they did, what type of training they did. So we took basically all that information, came back here and molded it into a way we liked it and started to implement our own program. We also held our first septic demo or IA lottery that year, where we basically had manufacturers come in who offered to install their systems for demonstration purposes, and then we had a lottery for homeowners who applied and got basically a free system to install, provided that we can test it and also provide training to individuals. Then in 2015, the Comprehensive Water Resources Management Plan came out, which I also identified as IAs and as a means of improved wastewater treatment. And then we began to install our IA demo systems that same year. 2016 was the enactment of Article 19 of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code, which basically allowed Suffolk County to be, or the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, to act as the responsible management entity, or RME, and also allowed us to start modifying our standards, creating standards to improve IA systems in Suffolk County. That year, we also revised our residential standards at the last half of the year, which allowed IAs to be installed on residential properties, and then we initiated our second septic demo program. As well, we installed our first commercial system at Bishop Beach, which many of you may be familiar with. It was an Aranco Advantex AX Max. And then we started the Sub-Watersheds Wastewater Management Plan. 2017 progressed even further. We started our Septic Improvement Program, also known as SIP, where we provided grants and low-interest loans to individuals to upgrade to an IA system. In addition, we amended Article 6 to address two policy changes. One is to phase out cesspools, and two is to address grandfathering of pre-existing commercial sites. And then we revised our commercial standards to allow for IA systems. This year, in 2018, New York State, they have a septic improvement program, or a septic replacement fund, where they have $75 million over 5 years, and Suffolk County was fortunate enough to be granted, out of the first year, $10 million out of an allocation of $15 million. We implemented our SHIP program, which we'll get into after, and the first NRP by Stony Brook Center for Clean Water Technologies was installed. Next slide. So basically tackling the problem or installing IAs is basically a multi-pronged approach, where we, again, we looked at the demonstrated innovative on-site systems through our demonstration program. We prepared the industry for installation and maintenance of these systems. Liquid waste contractors are the individuals that are responsible for installing them, so we had to modify their licensing requirements to make sure they were properly trained on installation and maintenance. Then we've created a responsible management entity, which is Article 19, and then we're working on code amendments and standards amendments. We already revised our residential, our commercial standards. We made what we call our first phase policy changes to Article 6, with future policy changes on the horizon, depending on identifying our priority areas for the Sub-Watersheds Wastewater Management Plan. So just a brief overview of the amendments we made to Article 6. So Article 6 basically defines how much sewage somebody can dispose on from their site to an on-site sewage disposal system, and that's been normally based on lot area. Right, so depending on where you are in the county, depending on your lot size, it basically tells you how much sewage you're allowed to discharge from that site if you're not connected to a STP or a sewer system. So in some cases, Article 6 was implemented in 1981. So there are a lot of commercial sites that were built prior to 1981. So some of these do not comply with our density standards, so they're discharging more than what was it be allowed under Article 6. So we call those grandfathered sites, and basically they need an exemption in Article 6 to permit them to keep that grandfathered flow. So our first policy change was to amend that policy. Second policy change was to require permits or approvals from the health department for replacement or retrofits of existing systems. Basically what this does is when somebody has a cesspool and it fails and they have to decide they want to replace it, they decide they want to replace it. You gotta have good luck. When they decide they want to replace it, they would have to get an approval from the health department, and at that time the system would have to meet current standards. At this time, right now, current standards is a septic tank plus a leaching structure, therefore cesspools would hopefully start to, we would see less and less of them because everybody would be upgrading to something conventional. All right, those changes were approved in December of 2017 by the Suffolk County Legislature and Suffolk County Board of Health. The grandfathering requirement went into effect on January 1st of 2018. And what that does is now some sites that have a grandfathered flow and they don't have a wastewater management approval, in order to keep that flow, they have to upgrade their system to an IA system. All right? They're allowed to keep the flow, but they have better means of treatment and reduce nitrogen. As for the replacement retrofit requirements, that's basically a two-phase program. As of July 1st of 2018, liquid waste license contractors are required to report when they replace or retrofit a system. That's just reporting. They don't have to comply with our standards yet. It's just to get them used to reporting. They also are required to report pump outs. All right, when they go to a site, they pump out a system, they're required to report it to the health department so we know what sites are getting pumped out. Unfortunately, on this one, we had some issues implementing the program, so we have delayed it, and we might change. We're working with the scavenger plants and the liquid waste contractors to make it a little more easier to report pump outs, and possibly looking at the scavenger plants to report the data to us, because it limits the amount of people we're dealing with. There's only about 3 scavenger plants or municipal scavenger plants within Suffolk County and a handful of private ones, as opposed to over 350 liquid waste license contractors. So that's still in the works. But July 1st of 2019, then liquid waste license contractors and homeowners would have to get approval from the health department when they replace their system. And hopefully that will be a streamlined approval process where basically we install the system and we get a certification indicating what they've installed. And I just want to reiterate, besides the grandfathering, because this confuses some people, the Suffolk County does not require IA systems at this time. All right, just looking in the future, and this is all dependent on a sub-watershed plan findings and the generic environmental impact statement from that. Phase 1 policy changes are complete. Phase 2 that may be considered after the GEIS is complete would be looking at IAs for new construction, looking at IAs of existing systems either at date certain or based on priority areas or based on at the time of failure. Also looking at IAs to be upgraded to time of property transfer, which is done in a couple other jurisdictions. And then looking at possibly increasing the density requirements for certain zones. Zones that are required to have 20,000 square foot minimum lot areas, upsizing those to 40,000 square feet, or 1 acre building lots. Builders.
Is that it?
No, this should be more. Yeah. So it's just a brief overview of the sub-watersheds plan, what that is, and why the policy changes are dependent on that. Is basically it's a blueprint for wastewater upgrades, where we're looking at about 190 sub-watersheds, looking at the nitrogen loads, those watersheds, and then looking at the levels of treatment we need to meet certain load reduction targets. So Justin's going to go over the IA technologies, but I just want to give you an overview of the permitting process, because anytime you install an IA system...
The ones in blue are the only ones that really are performing to that 19 milligram per liter standard. Some of the others might, but right now they're not, so they're not going to get approved until they make the necessary adjustments. So we do maintain a list of approved technologies. We mimicked an approval process after Massachusetts, where we have experimental, piloting, provisional, and general use. And we are looking at systems. We learned our lesson. I learned my lesson from Rhode Island, where the systems went in the ground and there was no follow-up, there was no required sampling. In Suffolk County, we require that even general use systems get sampled at least at a minimum of every 3 years. So we will always be able to look at the systems and see how the different technologies are performing. All right, so we also have some commercial demonstration projects. Completed was Sylvester Manor, Meshook County Park, John mentioned, Lake Ronkonkoma County Park, and then we have some experimental nitrogen-reducing biofilters at 3 county residents at county parks. We have a few pending. We have Vanderbilt Museum, TNC Upland Farms is a joint project between Nature Conservancy and Suffolk County, and also Center for Clean Water Technology. Reeves Beach in Riverhead has a pending project for a Norweco singular system. And then there are two parks in Lake Ronkonkoma and Brookhaven Islip that are pending. So there's most of the commercial, if not all of the commercial systems that we're demoing right now have been on county parks or town parks. All right, so we have systems in the ground. We've tested systems. We know that they work. How do we get them into the hands of homeowners that need them? And the county came up with in 2017 the Septic Improvement Program, which is an incentive program, consists of a low interest loan and a $10,000 grant from the county. The county executive alone signed it into law on May 31st, 2017. So individuals may qualify for up to $11,000 in grant money, $10,000 towards the installation of the treatment unit, an additional $1,000 for a leaching system, pressurized shallow drain field, which provides better nitrogen removal than your typical leaching pools. There is an income criteria, so if you make under $500,000, you're eligible for the grant, but if you make between $300,000 and $500,000, you're only eligible for 50% of the grant. So the loan program is administered by Community Development Corporation of Long Island. Individual homeowners are eligible for up to $10,000 at 3% over 15 years, and we're thankful that the loan pool was stood up with financial support from Bridgehampton National Bank. So grant eligibility criteria: single family, owner occupied, year-round residence, must be served by a septic system, not a rental property. Seasonal rentals on the east end are allowed if they rent it out for a short period of time, but a specific rental property or rental home is not eligible. And then no resident can be an elected official or office holder of any political party, and there obviously needs to be valid certificates of occupancy. So we do have a tiered approval process, or a point system that basically, if you're in a priority area or have a failure, you're pretty much guaranteed a grant as long as there's available funding. We have a scoring process that scores from 50 to 100. If you get 100, you fall higher in the queue than the ones that receive a score of 50. But everybody is eligible as long as there's available money. So we went out to the industry and we said, and we modeled this after the state of Maryland that also has a grant program. And we said basically under different scenarios provide the best base model or baseline pricing. So we don't want the heated seats or the navigation or any of that. We just want the base model pricing on this. And The cost range between $13,000 for scenario 1 up to $23,000 for scenario 3, and the different scenarios are based on the types of leaching. Are you using the existing leaching structure? Are you installing new gravity leaching, or are you installing a pressurized leaching system? So we looked at that, so we were able to give baseline prices, but as everybody here knows, every lot is very different. If it's a tight lot, a lot of site constraints, high groundwater, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to take an additional day to install, it's going to be more expensive. If you need to bring in a retaining wall, it's going to be more expensive. But these are guidelines and base prices for residents so that they can have some sort of confidence that the costs that they're getting have been vetted by the county. And every price quote that comes across my desk, we look at and make sure it's in accordance with the fixed rate pricing. So we also have electrical costs we make everyone aware of. Costs for the systems range between $57 a year to $178 a year. So it has some impact. Overall, it's not terrible, but we want to make homeowners aware of that. The maintenance for these systems range between $175 and $400 a year, depending on the technology. We also have all the contacts on our website if you're interested in any of the technologies. And we did the same thing with engineers. We went out, we negotiated fixed pricing for engineering firms. Again, this is for base design. If you need a survey or soil testing, there's additional costs. So just a snapshot, let's assume you have a system that costs $17,850. You apply the grant of $10,000, leaving the homeowner responsible with $7,850. They could finance that money through CDCLI, 3% over 15 years, which comes out to $648 a year or $54 a month. So if you're a homeowner and you have a failed cesspool and you're looking at spending $3,000 to $6,000 to replace it, it might make more sense to finance it at a lower out-of-pocket expense and get a better performing nitrogen removal system. So we've had a lot of interest in the program since we kicked it off in July 2017. I don't know why, but every recent program that we've kicked off has always started either July 1st or July 3rd. It seems to be a bad joke on us, so the office needs to be staffed up for 4th of July. We have 1,415 people that have registered for the program so far. Over 420 people now have completed applications. We have issued over 280 grant certificates. We have received over 94 permit applications. Right now we actually have 42 systems that have been installed. And then there's about another 50 to 60 that are ready to be installed. So there is a lot of interest, but as you can see, there is a gap between the number of completed applications and systems that actually went in the ground. And the reason, I'll talk about the reason for that in a minute. Here are the breakdown of grant certificates issued by town. Brookhaven, being the largest town, has the largest number. Southampton, East Hampton have the Community Preservation Fund and rebate program, so they have they're pretty popular and a lot of interest from these communities. And then also Huntington, Southold, and then Riverhead's down below with Babylon. One thing to note is 40% of grant applicants are from towns with community preservation funds. However, 70% of the installs have been from those towns. So what that says is that unless a homeowner is getting it for free, they're not that likely to put it in the ground. So that's a lesson we've learned, and I'll cover that more as we talk about changes to our septic improvement program. One thing to mention, I just want to show the breakdown of all the different systems. We currently have over 634 systems that have been either installed, under review, or permitted. That's a huge number because 2 years ago we had under 50. So we're growing rapidly, and it's very consistent with what Rhode Island and Maryland did in their first year of operation, was around 500 systems. All right, so October 11th of this year, we quietly introduced additional grant funding. So the state now John mentioned there's $75 million for the state septic system replacement program over 5 years. There's $15 million a year. Out of the first allocation of $15 million, Suffolk County was awarded over $10 million. So close to 67% of that allocation came to Suffolk County. And that was mainly because we had a pre-existing program. We already were up and running with our program, and we're the first county to develop such a program. So there are some differences in the eligibility between the county program and the state program. So we've been working with the state, and they've been very great to let us kind of implement this on a phased approach. So phase 1 is going to be under our current infrastructure and framework, and phase 2 is going to represent changes to our program so that we're more consistent with the state program. And as you can see, the state program cannot exceed 1,000 gallons per day. It does allow commercial properties and single-family and two-family homes and small businesses, and must be located in a priority area, but we're very thankful that they deemed all of Long Island, because we're a sole source aquifer, as a priority area. So phase 1 in progress. I sent out a couple hundred emails all at once 2 weeks ago, and that turned out maybe not to be the smartest thing to do, but I notified everybody in the queue that they may be eligible for an additional $10,000 in grants. So everybody that's in our queue, you saw the 420 that had completed applications, are now being contacted and informed that they're eligible for an additional $10,000. So for a total of up to $21,000 in grant funding. So it's a pretty good deal. And if the residents are also in Southampton or East Hampton, they're also eligible for money from the towns. So if it's a really tough high groundwater site, they can still have it paid for out of pocket without any out-of-pocket expense. We hope to implement phase 2 as of January in 2019. We're in the process of finalizing changes to the law and the rules and regulations. We want to streamline the application process, and we want to make sure our program is more consistent with the state program. Obviously, now that we have $10 million as opposed to $2 million a year to spend, we need more staff. We hired 6 staff to implement $2 million a year. We're going to need an additional staff to implement the $10 million, and we can't use the state grant money for that. So we're going to look at requiring homeowners to pay for design costs out of pocket. That'll ease the administration of the program and also require some level of investment and skin in the game from homeowners. And we're looking at how we're going to interact with the CPF towns so that it's fair to both the east end and the western parts of Suffolk County. So some of the phase 2 changes, I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly. We're looking to allow grants on leased land. We're looking to remove the income restrictions to be consistent with the state program. We're going to add an incentive for LMI, or low to moderate income applicants. We're going to allow rentals of primary residences and eliminate the requirement for properties to be occupied year-round. We're looking to allow multi-family accessory apartments and remove restrictions for in-home businesses. And then we're looking to remove the requirement for the applicant to be a natural person. So we'll allow trusts, LLCs, and other types of tax shelters and hideaway businesses. We're also looking to increase the incentives for nitrogen reducing components such as pressurized shallow drain fields and polishing filters. And again, we're determining ways to incorporate the state grants with the county grants and the town rebates. All right, just quickly, all these systems have control panels and air vents. I just want to be totally upfront with everyone what you're getting when you're getting one of these systems. So you have electrical cost, you have operation and maintenance, and you have control panels, air vents, and you have covers to grade in the yard. And if you're a really nice, creative homeowner, you can landscape around it and have everything blend into the yard. Here's an example of a Norweco singular after installation. Grass hasn't grown in yet, but you see the 3 lids to grade. a larger Norweco system with some lids. You wouldn't see all of these lids. One of these is a sampling port that we had for testing purposes. Here's a system over in Hampton Bays on Shinnecock Bay. They had a 5-gallon block cesspool, and yes, I said that right, 5-gallon, it was tiny. Every time they flushed the toilet, the can oozed out of the ground and rolled down towards the bay. So they were thrilled to be able to get a system. The homeowner was adamant that they'd be able to see the bay from the deck without looking at the lids, and he would call me all the time saying, Justin, I'm really not sure that I want to look at the system from this angle. So we went out with cardboard and cutouts and held them in different areas, and he said, okay, that's the spot that I want the system. So he can't see it from his outdoor shower, he can't see it from his deck, and he has a perfect view of the bay, and now he doesn't have sewage running down the hill. So win-win. We also have this Fuji system. This is installed in Jamesport, and all of this grass you see in the background here is being irrigated by treated wastewater through drip irrigation. So the homeowner had an extensive landscaping, an extensive yard, and now she's not using any sprinklers or fertilizer. It's being naturally fertilized and irrigated. So that's all I have. We have our website, we have our online application, we have our claimourwater.info. If you go to the top of the page, it says sign up for a septic improvement program. Anyone who's interested or knows anyone who's interested, tell them now is the time to get up to $21,000 in grant money. So we can't guarantee how long that we have money available, so now's the time, and thank you all for your attention.
Request that we hold off for Q&A at the end of the session. Again, how the town of Southampton is running their IA program. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, New York State passed legislation as relates to the CPF fund that permits 20% of that to go towards water quality projects. As part of the ability to access that funds, there was a requirement that each of the towns adopt a water quality management project plan. One of the components of the town of Southampton's is the ability to have a rebate program for IA systems. I'm going to hand it off to Mary, and she's going to discuss that. But before I do that, after the adoption of that project plan, the town of Southampton in the summer of 2017 mandated in certain areas, we have a priority area and a high priority area and a medium priority area. The factors that went into identifying what those areas were groundwater contributing areas to the surface waters, primarily the 2-year contributing is the high priority. Also other factors were flood zones, surge zones, and those were identified in our water quality project management plan. We also allowed for, knowing that the county was going to complete their watershed plans, our ability to amend those priorities based on the results of those very detailed watershed plans, which we're still waiting for that plan to be completed. So in the mandating, the projects that are mandated to upgrade their systems are any new construction within the priority area. Also, if you have a addition of more than 25% of the existing structure, can also be required to upgrade to an IA system. In addition, if you do anything that happens to result in the health department substantially requiring an upgrade of your system, it also has to be an IA system. Right now that's basically how our mandate program, although we do have the rebate for in the priority area, we also have the ability, we have something called, as I said, the medium priority area. Although it's not mandated to upgrade those systems,
the rebate program is available for property owners who voluntarily upgrade their system. Okay, Mary?
Thank you, Kyle, and thanks for inviting me here. I recognize lots of my colleagues here. Nice to see you, and nice to see new faces here. I am the Community Preservation Fund Program Manager for the town of Southampton. I've been doing that for about 16 years now, and have the great pleasure of also implementing this new water quality component of the program, which initially was simply land preservation. So our rebate program is also called an incentive program. That's why we make available this rebate both in the high and medium priority areas of the project plan. So Suffolk County offers a grant, that's the money up front, they're paying the installer, and the town of Southampton provides the reimbursement after you've paid out. This rebate program. It's based on a 3-tier income eligibility for residential properties. If a property owner earns less than $300,000, they're eligible up to 100% of the costs, not to exceed $20,000. If the property owner earns $301,000 to $500,000, they're eligible to up to 50% of the cost, not to exceed $20,000. And finally, if a property owner earns $501,000 to $1 million, they're eligible for up to 25% of the cost, not $20,000. The costs are direct costs only: engineering or design, installation, excavation, grading, tree removal, electrical costs, and maintenance can all be covered by the rebate funding. The rebate is available to owners of a property, including LLCs, trusts, corporations, estates, partnerships. The property can be a vacation home, doesn't have to be owner occupied. The property owner is not limited to one rebate. If they own several properties, they can get a rebate for each of those properties. And if they have a property with 2 systems on it, such as a home and a cottage with separate systems, they are eligible for 2 rebates. Again, it's an incentive program, so we're being very generous and incentivizing this as best we can. Also, non-residential property owners are eligible in the higher medium area, and there's no income requirement. Again, incentivizing commercial property owners to do the right thing and upgrade their system. The procedure for the rebate is we have a 1-page application online. We encourage all interested parties to go online and utilize the website. The first step that we do is we verify the eligibility and encumber the funds for the applicant for a 12-month duration. That's the period of time they have to get the system done, completed, paid for, and come back to us for their rebate. We verify their income through their most recent federal income tax return, which they provide us. We then send the applicant to obtain their Suffolk County Department of Health Services permits, installations, get everything done. Once the installation is complete, the applicant submits the following to obtain a town certificate of electrical compliance. The applicant will submit an eligibility approval, which is the first section of the application, as well as an installation certificate, their final approval from the health department, and a notarized certificate from the contractor. The building department of the town then issues a certificate of electrical compliance. The property owner brings that to our department with all their eligible invoices, the W-9, and we process their rebate. The applicant is notified to come pick up their rebate at the office, or if they wish, they can have us directly pay a vendor. That's a new provision we added. I also wanted to mention that when we first rolled out the rebate, the maximum was $15,000. And our town board quickly learned that it wasn't quite enough. Even with the Suffolk County grant and our rebate, it was requiring more expensive systems and also requiring the accessory costs of excavation, re-landscaping, grading, irrigation replaced, etc. So to give some quick statistics on our rebate incentive program, which we rolled out last year on September 1st, 2017. So from September to December of 2017, we had 24 applications. We paid out $170,000 in 12 of those rebates. For 2018, we currently have 73 applications. We've encumbered over $1 million so far this year. So our total budget right now to pay those who are participating is $1.6 million. That's a total eligible applications on file right now of 97. Currently, we have no limit on the funding available for rebates in the town of Southampton. 20% of the annual CPF fund for water quality projects right now is running approximately $11 million. That's not $11 million available for rebates. That's $11 million available for water quality projects. So we are doing larger projects as well as the rebate component. But at this point, this program's in place probably through the life of the program, which is through 2050. I don't necessarily see this rebate program ending anytime soon. So I'm happy to say there's lots of money available in the town to make this happen. As I indicated, our process, we encourage applicants to use the town website. There's a fillable application. They submit it via email. There's links there to the Suffolk County. There's phone numbers. Once we indicate to folks that everything is on the website, we rarely hear from them. So we consider that a good success. That it's self-explanatory, it's easy, it's streamlined. The applicant goes to the website and you can input your address to see whether you're in a high or medium priority area. You can complete the application, turn it around very quickly, and then we wait for Suffolk County to do their thing. Person comes back with their invoices and we pay. Feedback has been very positive. That's all like that. No program. I'm going to hand it over to Chris now.
Thank you, Mary. The town of East Hampton's incentive program is similar to the town of Southampton, so I'm not going to reiterate a whole bunch of what Maria and Kyle mentioned. We had to come up with a plan. The town, I can't say we because I don't work for the town and I'm not an elected official of the town, I'll say the town. At the time, they thought they were one-upping Southampton and made a $16,000 rebate when Southampton's was 15 and now they're behind. They also changed some of the income eligibility to 100% percent for incomes up to $500,000, and it would be 50% 50% less for income over $500,000. The difference in the town is you're eligible for 100% of the rebate if you live within a harbor protection overlay district. If you are outside of a harbor protection overlay district, it is a $10,000 rebate. The mandates for East Hampton Town are town-wide, recognizing that A, it's a small town, and B, that the water all goes somewhere at some point, so why continue to allow anyone, anywhere, to do what you know is wrong? So they made their mandate town-wide, which has been a little bit more clear-cut for people. They don't have to guess when they come into the building department whether or not they're in a sensitive zone or not. The couple of other things that are slightly different, we have been working to get, if you are a commercial property, you could come in for a rebate. We also worked out a process for residences that are not single-family residences, so condos, co-ops, affordable housing units. The level of funding allowed to those properties was based on the flow, and that flow would be divided by 440 gallons per day, which is your typical single-family home, and then multiplied by $16,000. So we were trying to equalize the grant or incentive, but those applicants had to go before the advisory committee. They wouldn't just go through the rebate process. We hope to, in the future, make the process a little bit easier. You currently have to apply for a building permit. It's supposed to be an expedited building permit, but it confuses everybody because it's the full-blown form building permit. What we've been hoping to move towards in the future is what because they don't require an electrical permit, but they still want to track the installs of these, is to take something from Shelter Island where they have a one-page registry form. The total water quality improvement budget for the town of East Hampton is between $5 and $6 million. To put that in perspective with East Hampton's $11 million. When you jump over to Shelter Island, just because I have an idea of what's going on over there as well, it's about $440,000. So you can see the funds that are available from town to town vary. Response has been good. There have been very few to no complaints with the mandate for new construction at the moment. And I'm always impressed to see the amount of interest that comes in to come and sit in on our monthly meetings and ask questions about new projects. And all are welcome to come and do so.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for any questions for any of the panelists.
I have two questions. The first one is there any tax implication on the grants, either state or federal? If you're receiving a grant, are we going to look at that as income, or is that non-taxable?
The question is what are the tax implication on either the grant or the rebate program?
All right, I knew I couldn't escape without getting that question. So, taxability is the county's position that the grants are not taxable, at least the county grant is not taxable. However, there are other departments within the county, or other elected officials that have a difference of opinion. So to answer your question, right now we don't have an answer. We're going to be seeking an IRS determination to determine whether or not the grants are considered taxable. There is a thought that because we're paying directly to the vendors and the vendors are paying taxes on their income earned, that it's not going to the homeowner, that it's not taxable. However, I don't have an answer for you at this time. As far as the state program goes, we don't have an answer. And I'll turn it over to Kyle and Mary to talk about the town and tax implications.
Our position, based on the controller's research and the town's research, is that there is likely a taxable event here, and on our application, we make sure we indicate that any taxes due on this as income.
Right, a rebate is a taxable event. As far as has been determined by the towns, there is an effort, a concerted effort underway right now to try and tweak those town programs. Mary had mentioned that the Southampton town is now giving you the option to list your vendors that you would like to get paid, and they will pay them directly, thereby reducing that tax burden from you. We're trying to streamline that process and make it as uniform across the East End towns with CPF programs as possible. And we're building the plane as we fly it right now. This is something that we learned a little bit late, and the last thing we want is blowback from people who volunteered to do something to be upset by something like this. So it's a work in progress, and we're just working out some of the details as to make sure that the towns aren't caught liable between a contract between a homeowner and a vendor.
And then I have one additional question. Exactly what is the electricity hooked up to, and what does it do? What is it running?
So another great question. So these systems, they all rely on biological treatment, but they all do so in a different way. So some of the systems utilize aerators, some have external blowers, others have submerged pumps that are essentially, one way or another, you're adding oxygen to the system. So most of the systems have some sort of air blower component, and that's running and that's using electricity. There's also some that have recirculation pumps to move the water around for maximum treatment, so those use electricity. And you have your control panel that oversees the alarms and the function of the pumps and air blowers.
So these are all products that are manufactured and sold by specific companies. When one of these companies goes out of business in 10 years or so, are people going to have problems getting parts and software upgrades, or is stuff kind of standardized in the industry?
Right, so it is fairly standardized in the industry. I really hope none of these companies go out of business. However, what we did with our licensing is we trained and we have a separate endorsement for maintenance providers, so that although one company might be selling the materials, there could be another company that's maintaining the system. They would have the parts in stock. All of the systems that we have a track record, have been around. Even the newest system, FujiClean, they're new to the US, but there's over 2 million of them in Asia, and they have a track record as well. So there's really no system that hasn't proved that they can succeed in other parts of the country. There's no reason to doubt that they would here. And the way that we have our maintenance structured, those companies, multiple companies can be servicing the different types of systems.
Yeah, recognizing that this initiative is focused on individual systems, is the county looking forward or out at potential IA technology for higher flows, for multifamily residential developments or commercial developments where there's shopping centers that may have flows of 10,000 or 15,000 that might replace the chroma glass technology?
Yeah, most of these systems can be upsized to handle higher flows. So we do allow them for commercial sites that meet the density requirements of Article 6. Some of these sites in Ship Beach, for example, is about 3,000 gallons per day worth of flow. We've actually seen higher flows in some instances, and it's treating it superbly. So they can be upsized, and a lot of these shopping centers would be able to use them. Another item that we are looking at is in the sub-watersheds plan, the GEIS. We're looking at our Appendix A systems. And there's two things we're looking at. One is increasing those from 15,000 to 30,000 gallons per day. And then two, looking at setback requirements, possibly reducing those setbacks to allow larger flow sites to connect to an Appendix A system. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a chroma glass system. There are other systems. There's the BEST system. There's NBR systems. There's SBR systems that can all be utilized. And again, a lot of our IA manufacturers too can go up to those sizes, and they could probably qualify for an Appendix A system as well.
What happens if you have like a longer term power outage, like a day or two?
Basically all our IAs, unless you have a pressurized shallow drain field, they'll flow through by gravity. So if the power goes out, treatment levels will reduce, but you'll still be able to dispose of your sewage from the house and not cause a public health hazard.
Yeah.
Two questions, one for the county. You said you were going to, kind of like the state program, where the homeowner is going to bear the cost of the design and everything. Will that be fundable through the low interest loans? For the East End towns, do you have any provisions in your codes where if a house is substantially damaged in, let's say, a hurricane, where they have to rebuild 50% more of the house, will they be mandated to bear the cost of the IA system?
As for the total design costs, so our proposed changes have to go through the Suffolk County Legislature first. So they would have to approve that change. But if they did approve that change, I don't see why CDCLI wouldn't allow those costs to be covered, but if they haven't made a formal agreement that they'd cover those costs. I think they'd be waiting to see if that is changed in our law, and after that, they'd probably let us know.
As it relates to the question about, a house being damaged in a storm event or a fire or something like that, and it would I would say yes, although we would require it to be upgraded, but we would also fund the upgrade as well. So particularly, if it was in a storm event or a surge that exposed the system, which then in turn would require it to be upgraded as well. So the answer to your question is, we would require it.
Any other questions?
That's actually a better question for this afternoon's panel than this panel. For instance, it's a longer discussion. I wish the town had a similarly robust incentive program for people to do retreat as they do to upgrade their sanitary systems. And I'll highlight a application or a discussion that came across the advisory committee recently. A trailer park in an extremely low-lying area was considering upgrading their sanitary system, and the discussion began. You're utilizing public funds to install infrastructure. Do you want to utilize? Typically, when you use public funds for infrastructure, you consider at least a 40-year lifespan. If the structure is at an elevation of less than 5 feet, does that meet that criteria of lasting at least 40 years? No, it probably doesn't. So, but that community's not going anywhere, right? So you're stuck in this really difficult. They were offered a buyout recently, and they didn't take it. So how do you allow them to continue to pollute by basically dumping their waste in the bay, or do you install something and incentivize them to be there for upwards of 40 years? These are really difficult discussions, and please hit the next panel, not us.
I just want to add something. Yes, that's a difficult discussion for after dinner, but in order to get FEMA or New York Rising or those kind of programs to pay for the cost of an upgrade like this, it has to be required. If it's just voluntary, they won't pay for it. So that's kind of one tick in the pro column for making it required and not just optional.
I think it's more directed at John and Justin. In terms of the western towns that don't participate in the Community Preservation Fund, have you seen any model approaches from any of them in terms of trying to interact with and address, mandating improvements to IA systems in their own limits?
Brookhaven's the only town that I'm aware of that mandates IAs, and that's if you're within 500 feet of their wetland zone. So there has been talk, Chris, you might know more about some other communities that have been talking about requiring IAs in areas, and I know South Hold does it on a case-by-case basis at the zoning board level, so that's how a lot of towns are handling it.
I do know some of the incorporated villages in the town of Southampton are also entertaining mandating as well.
Right, so as Kyle and Mary mentioned before, the town of Southampton mandates IAs in their critical areas on new construction and rebuilds, and East Hampton mandates theirs town-wide. I believe Shelter Island also has a similar mandate for new construction in priority areas. The one thing I failed to mention earlier is in East Hampton's law, they tried to draft, and this was at the request of the previous supervisor, to draft a low nitrogen system definition, such that if the time came where there was more than 1 or 2 technologies available that were reaching 5 or 10 milligram per liter discharges, that they could set that as their bar and ignore the ones that hit between 10 and above. So there's a little, they tried to give themselves leeway to be aspirational, and I believe Brookhaven has a similar language in their code. It's a fine line to walk as if you're overstepping your authorities, but the goal was to be aspirational and to motivate the industry to work harder to achieve a better standard so that we can achieve success in restoring our coastal waters quickly.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Just ask you to another round of applause for our panel.
Thank you. And I love the lead into the next panel, so we're at that question, perfect time. So I'm just going to make a couple of plugs and announcements before we break for dinner. Any planning or zoning board members that are in attendance this evening, if you need a certificate of participation, please visit the registration desk and just put a star next to your name on the registration sheet and provide your email address, and we'll be sure to email you a copy of the certificate. Every year, the APA Long Island section offers a scholarship to, typically it's up to 3 junior planners or planning students. That scholarship provides funds to attend the National Planning Conference. This year, the National Planning Conference happens to be in San Francisco, so a pretty cool location this coming spring. The application will open in sometime in December and usually close towards the end of January. So it gives a chance for college students that are in between semesters to kind of get wind of the application. The application is called the Arthur Kunz Memorial Scholarship, and it's a tribute to Mr. Kunz. Many of you certainly hope we have the privilege of working with Mr. Kunz. And again, this is a tribute to his love and passion for the field and the national conference and the mobile workshops that the conference offers. So that information will be on our website come December, so I just wanted to make everyone aware. If you know a young or junior planner or a planning student, please push that information out to those folks.